The Power Bryant. Good evening, good sir. It is finally game week here. How are you?
First off, I want to let everyone know I have a weird beard right here because I'm going through a little skin thing. Hopefully, I'll be good enough to still fly to Vegas. I'm allowed to shave everywhere on my face outside of here because I have to put medicine here. So if you see a glistening on here, don't think I just randomly started an OnlyFans. It's because there's actual triple antibiotic cream. Now, Blake, as is always the case, all right, because I do my due diligence and I actually try to cover the other team. You do a good job of it as well. I did a film study on USC, okay, and that led me to being on a USC show, all right, and he started the show. I love him, USCJ. He's a very entertaining guy, lost in the sauce, okay, he's just like you. And he immediately got into the 2003 LSU versus USC debate. Okay. Then I was like, all right, we're going to talk about the actual game. So then he decided, okay, to do LSU versus USC wide receiver U. Okay. And I love him. I do. He tried to do it. And I understand if you factor in ancient years and you throw in Lynn Swann and all those guys, USC's got unbelievable history. So he did a debate. You can go see this Twitter clip if you want to. And the third name that came out of his mind, you know what the third USC wide receiver name he listed? He listed Robert Woods.
And Robert Woods wasn't a horrible player.
But we're having an all-time great wide receiver debate. You don't go Robert Woods third overall, especially if you're comparing him to Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham, Malik. Is Robert Woods in that conversation if you're doing an all-time wide?
Can I just tell you something?
Go ahead.
All of that, the 2003, the wide receiver U, I'm just going to be real with you. For me, since we haven't won a game one since 2019, I don't give a shit about it. Now, you know what I want? I want you to go out there and punch somebody in the mouth and win the football game is what I want. Screw all this other shit about wide receiver U, all that other stuff. It's time to go out there and punch somebody in the mouth. Now, in the off season, we can have that debate. Right now,
I thought I was going on to talk about because look, I'll start this off. Blake was saying, as we discussed privately, and we can, like you said, we can always have that top five debate or whatever. I don't really like doing that. I really don't. What I would tell you though is Miller Moss. Really watching him was so much better versus Louisville than I thought. Because
that's why I've been saying all offseason and nobody wanted to listen.
Yeah. So, I heard you say that and I watched the game and I was like, okay, this is a really good game. But, when you're actually just watching the game in the background, you're just kind of watching it. You have to really go back and rewatch the game multiple times. And Blake, I counted 4 throws in that game.
Elite.
That were unfreaking believably good.
Yeah.
Okay. Like ridiculous for a guy starting his first game. Like unfreaking believable, tight window, hit him in stride over the overhang linebacker kind of stuff. Like that was absurd. It is so hard to do that in your first start. Now I understand he's a year 4 guy in his first start, Blake, but
so is Garrett.
Yes. And obviously versus Wisconsin.
Well, second start, but both of them going in their second start in year 4.
And it's ridiculous how similar they are. Coming in for a Heisman Trophy quarterback, year 4 guys, top 100 recruits in the 2021 class. If you're a super diehard recruiting guy, I am not, but obviously I follow it. Miller Moss was recruited by LSU in the Orgeron regime. It was later in the cycle, but you can go read plenty of articles on that. This guy can play. He can really, really, really play. And there is a school of thought amongst USC fans that they feel, and they truly do feel, that Miller Moss might be not better than Caleb Williams. Nobody would be stupid enough to say that. But like you've mentioned on here, Blake, and people have slammed you for it, he's going to run the offense the way it's intended. And that's just the big difference. And what I could tell you about that is Lincoln Riley probably prefers that way. Like,
name the guys that played inside his system that have had very good success.
yeah,
I will remind people, Baker Mayfield was a walk-on. Now, let's start off here with Miller Moss and go there, and then we'll just go down the list of previewing this game here. USC has had a lot of people poo-pooing on them nationally. Lincoln Riley isn't any good. They're soft, yada, yada, yada. You know what he's not bad at doing? He's actually probably the most elite is quarterback play.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when Nick Saban, when Jalen Hurts was transferring, Nick came out and said, hey, listen, you need to go to Oklahoma because Lincoln Riley is the best developer of quarterbacks in the country. I fully believe that. That's the GOAT saying that. That's Nick Saban saying that, right?
Yeah.
They were also, during the portal period, going after now Ohio State quarterback Will Howard in the portal. Well, Miller Moss went out there in the bowl game and shut a lot of people up, including his head coach, and he got to name the starter. Here's the thing that I think about Miller Moss. I think that he is going to your point, he is going to play inside their system more than Caleb Williams ever did. When they lost, meaning USC, what happened? Caleb improvised too much. It was too much about him, the stupid-ass fingernails. But Miller Moss playing inside the system will win them football games. Here's another thing, though. He has a problem with locking onto a read sometimes and turning the football over. He had 2 interceptions in their spring game because he did that. You know who he is? He's a least arm-talented Garrett Nussmeier. He doesn't have the arm strength, but they have a lot of the same attributes, and they're similar to one another.
Very.
And I think that people I think Miller Moss could have a very decent day. And look, here's the thing, man. Their wide receiver room is not bad. You know, I look at the Lemon kid. I look at Zechariah Branch, their tight end room. Carter, they have playmakers out wide that can present you problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Blake, Mekhi Lemon is pretty good. His numbers weren't good, but when he actually played in the Louisville game, he was really good. Jacoby Lane, 6'4" guy, reminds me a little bit, not as talented, but a younger kind of BTJ type of player. He's a really good jump ball red zone weapon for them. Deuce Robinson, also a former 5-star, who's, was labeled as a tight end, mostly been a wide receiver. And then, of course, there's so much gravity to Zachariah Branch because he was, such an elite 5-star recruit. He's very good. He's probably a little bit more dangerous as a returner than he is a receiver at this point in his career, but he's good. So shout out to Ashton Stamps and Christian Stamps. He's going to have his work cut out for him. And I think Ashton will have some good plays. And this would be one thing I would say about Miller Moss is there are times when he tries to throw with so much anticipation that the way he can lock in on someone, you can undercut it. You can undercut it and take it the other way. And I know we are really focused in on Garrett Nussmeier, but Miller Moss's big turnover in that Louisville game was in the red zone. Okay. Right. So then, and the DB cut back. I don't know why he cut back. He could have picked it off and pick six and tied the game. And the way we view Miller Moss now would be a lot different if that was actually house called. Right. And I think, just to use Ashton Stamps, I think he was faster than the DB that actually picked it off and probably would have taken it to the house. So it's interesting. I do think, Blake, one of my bolder predictions in this game is there will be a special teams touchdown in this game at some point or a pick six in this game. I think
that doesn't bode well for you if you're LSU about special teams.
Yeah. And you've been sounding the alarm on this, right?
You ever seen the first Ninja Turtles movie?
Yeah, Master Splinter.
Remember when Michelangelo is hitting people in the head with cymbals? That's what I've been trying to do to the LSU fan base. They were number one in the country last year in block punts. They were number one in the country last year in efficiency rate on punt returns. They were number one in the country last year in punt coverage. Do not play around with him. By the way, Kyron Hudson had 3 blocked punts last year. 3. By the way, in the bowl game, they blocked one against Louisville. The very next play is an RPO slant to Kyron Hudson for a tutty. Like, look, you can put poo on them all you want to. But the truth is, they do have some playmakers. Now, here's the thing with that. And when you play a high-flying offense, I mean, look, Lincoln's offenses have been top. They're a walking top 10 offense.
Yeah, every year. Yeah.
You got to go on the ground and mess them up. If your O-line is as good as you think and we say that they are, if you're that good, Carter, I'm tired of pussyfooting around with this one. You got to line up 12 personnel and knock some son of a bitch's teeth in the dirt. You got to line up and dick them down. Screw this. Let's open it up. Throw that son bitch all over the place. Hell no. You line up in 12 personnel with your big-time offensive line, and you start clapping cheeks. I'm tired of pussyfooting around about it. If you want to win game 1, you go out there, start patty smacking that ass, and run the ball down their field or run that down their throat. Here's the thing, though. I think that you got to play a little bit of keep away through the first couple of quarters. You got to let the game settle down for this defense. As the legend of week 0, Brent Key said on Saturday, run the ball.
There were 13 possessions in that game.
I don't give 2 Rudy Poos. Run the ball.
All right. I tend to disagree. Do whatever you feel is best offensively.
That's what they're going to do.
But if
you better get ready for it.
If that is what LSU feels they do best, which is mixing in inside zone, outside zone, pulling some you've seen in practice and you've heard as well, getting guys out in space, getting your talented offensive lineman out there, I would love to see it. I really, really, really would. And on top of that, Blake, I do think one area where USC got better was their transfer safeties.
I agree.
That they actually are proven good players. And the thing that kind of scares me about it is one of them transferred in from UCLA. So he knows the systems.
Yep.
He's going to know how to make all the right calls because it is a new system. It is a drastically different system than Grinch. I'm not just saying that because they have a new guy who's been a better DC than him. It is a different system. So if you do run the football well, it does limit what Lynn could do as far as being exotic with the blitz packages, right?
Correct. Because if you send one in the wrong direction, Caleb Jackson can house call something on you very quickly.
Right. And to use an example of LSU playing a really difficult neutral site game, not necessarily in their backyard, that was the first big touchdown in the Miami game. Nicholas Brissett, Miami got caught in a call, and Nicholas Brissett had the most wide open.
And was a check at the line from Burrow.
Yes,
right? It was a check at the line from Burrow to get into the dive play.
Yes, exactly.
Here's what I'm trying to say, and I see we got some super chats in here. We'll get to them in just a moment.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you do it all game, but listen, they're trying to figure shit out defensively just like you are. And the thing about that is look, I actually don't think that their defensive line is as bad as some are trying to paint them out to be. I think Barry Alexander, Nate Shepard coming over from Vandy, Anthony Lucas, who was a part of that really good Texas A&M class. Carter, they got some NFL bodies up front. So do you along the offensive line. But I think that the reason that I'm saying that too is you got to work Garrett into this game too. Take some pressure off of him early. Because if you can keep that wide receiver unit from USC off the field, it's going to benefit you so many different ways. Now, you don't want to do that, and I understand, like, you've had your thoughts on that.
No,
but when you look at this LSU offense versus this USC defense, where do you think – is it just the O-line where they have the advantage, or do they have advantages elsewhere too?
Yeah, because their name slips my mind because it just does. The safeties, if you do run the football, you got to bring somebody else in, especially if you do it out of 12. If you can run out of 12 it obviously adds an extra gap to the running game, and you really do have to drop a safety in. And that's where potentially not having Chris Hilton can really hurt you because
their safeties are Alakai Arnold and Kamari Ramsey.
Okay. If you have to bring one of those guys in, it just opens up more shots down the field, which obviously that's where Garrett is most comfortable throwing the moon balls, right? So if you can run the football, it's going to open up just so much for your offense. And also, Blake, that's kind of been the identity of this team. I know LSU's wide receiver room has had a really good spring, and over the last few weeks in particular, obviously, Blake, you've been at practice, but I've heard that CJ Daniels is kind of settled in, right?
On third down, he is his go-to right now, man. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. So Garrett and CJ have started to develop, a little bit. But even with the wide receiver room being as great as it is, the identity of this team and a big part and identity of this program, whether you look at the recruiting class where LSU has 3 top 100 interior linemen committed, 2 from outside of the state. Brian Kelly wants to be known as an offensive line program, and Will Campbell is the leader of this team. So if that is your identity going into next year, let them go out in week 1 and decide this game. Run the football. Trust them.
Now, I'm going to say I say that, but Carter, if they're running the ball at 4 or 5 yards a pop, that's a win for me. Because I really don't think I really do think people are underestimating the talent that USC has along their defensive line. Like, I really, really believe that. Like, they got some guys there. The only thing is, Carter, is that I do think that when you line up in 12 personnel, okay, you can start out athleting them. Then the bootlegs come behind it. Then the stuff with Mason Taylor in the flat starts coming behind it. Those are the small things that you got to complete on early and give Garrett Nussmeier the completions early. Here's another thing that I want to throw your way in your thoughts. This wide receiver room on the boundary versus USC's DBs. Like, I look at another Louisiana guy here, but Grady Vance, is going to be in there. And look, man, you have some very big-bodied wide receivers. He is not that physical. He's just not. And I think that you can exploit that. Is there anything with our wide receivers versus their DBs that stand out to you?
Yeah, I do like LSU's receivers going up against USC's corners. I do. And I think they will win that matchup throughout the evening, right? And once again, like you said, in the running game, you can really get numbers vertically if you can get that going. I like Kyron versus pretty much any DB in the country this year. I mean, I really do think, if you actually break down what he did last year and you look at what some NFL evaluators have said about him and CJ Daniels, you should like those two going up against basically anyone, right? One thing that's interesting, with Brian Kelly talking about Kyle Parker, this is a guy who spent a lot of last year blocking. And when he was out there, it was just run blocking.
And that's why he's going to play on Saturday.
And that's a memo to all young players. If you work your ass off blocking, they're going to want to play you a lot more. And there were times when he blocked in games last year, Blake, he got put on his rear end. And he just got better and better and better at it. So I'm really excited to see Kyle Parker get his chance because he will play some, this weekend. So if you can, I do like LSU's wide receivers as blockers too. And I do think LSU will put a little bit more emphasis on outside zone, which obviously increases the importance of outside blocking from your receivers. I think LSU will have, success running at a 5-tech and the B gaps and the C gaps and all of that, especially, with Caleb's speed. So I'm really excited to see that, especially if DJ Chesser can be your center and Miles Frazier is healthy as a guard. You can really do some creative things in the run game, and hopefully LSU will be able to get that going.
One thing too, LSU is going to run some counter. Okay. Yep. They're going to run the ball. They're going to get Will Campbell out in space. And reference to Grady, I see some people in the chat. Grady Vance did not lock up Kyron Lacy. Are you crazy?
No,
you better go back and watch it.
Kyron will cook.
Kyron will cook. And he cooked Caleb Downs last year, and he's far better than Grady Vance. I think the biggest question, Carter, going into this before we get to some Brian Kelly comments to wrap it up here, what every LSU fan wants to know is going to be, how does this defense look against this USC offense? Let's look at the wide receivers of USC versus this DB room, a room that was very much tormented a year ago. I guess when you preview this game, how do you see it?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say, and this gets a little personal, and I don't like to get too personal in my analysis, but this LSU secondary is a little bit more together, okay? And what I would say about that is all you have to do is see what happened to the LSU secondary room last year. There were a lot of guys in there that didn't have the team first compared to themselves first, and I'll leave it at that. That helps, okay? It really does help. And and I understand, you could be a big Corey Raymond guy or not like Corey Raymond or not like, and relatively inexperienced Jake Olson. But I do feel, just speaking to people I trust, that this defense from top to bottom is just more together. Now, is this the most talented LSU defense? No, not even close. But at least they will play more together. Last year, there was a lot of individuals not playing as a team, and you would notice that pretty quickly, and that's how a lot of explosive plays would happen. I do think this team will be better as a unit, Blake, and that's going to be very important because USC, it's not a big thing, but they can run trick plays. They can definitely run a lot of reverses and things like that. You have to be versus the Lincoln Riley coach team. And the
got to be disciplined, man. That's how I led the show off tonight. You got to be disciplined versus him.
And one area where I think he will attack is the second level. I know there's so much focus on the third level with the DBs going up against their talented receivers. But Lincoln does a really good job, and Norvell did this last year as well, attacking that second intermediate level of your defense, right? And that's where USC really had a lot of success versus Louisville. And the reason why I think they're going to do that is because, well, Harold Perkins, this is going to be the first full-time game since last year, obviously, but more so just getting back into being an off-ball linebacker. This will be his first full-time game alongside Greg Penn, and obviously Weeks is going to play a lot as well. How does LSU defend against the intermediate stuff? Because one thing USC does a really good job of is when you run a blitz, somehow, some way, they always have a really good call against that blitz. And one thing Miller Moss did a really good job of versus Louisville is backing up and hitting shallow drags for big gains. Basically,
what you struggled with last year.
Yeah, and it kind of like what Mississippi State did to you in 2020. Obviously, that's a nightmare memory. So you have to be ready for that. So the second level of that LSU defense will get really stretched. And honestly, that's what a lot of good play callers do. So Greg Penn, Harold Perkins, and Whit Weeks very well could decide this game for LSU. And I know we have focused so much. What about the defensive tackle room? What about the young corners? I think that second level very well could decide this.
I think Harold Perkins is going to have a great game.
I do too.
Here's my hot take. I think they gave him number 7 because of how good he's been this fall camp.
Yeah.
I think they wouldn't have given that to him, and they would have just said, yeah, we got a number 7. His name's Will Campbell.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to give Greg Penn the signs from the sideline, and the calm is going to be with Perk.
Right, because he'll be on the field more often.
He'll be on the field more often, and I think Blake Baker being in his ear. Look, a lot has been made of Blake Baker too here, Carter, and look, this is going to be a chess match. And Blake Baker's had a lot of success at Missouri. He's had a lot of success at a lot of places. Lincoln Riley is considered one of the best offensive minds in the country. I guess my question to you is, I'm not saying that Blake Baker's going to get cooked or out-coached or out-schemed. I'm not saying any of that. I don't believe any of that. But when you look at USC Lincoln Riley versus Blake Baker, do you look at it from a holistic view? Like, man, this is going to be a hell of a test for Blake Baker going up against Lincoln here.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for your first one with Lincoln and time to prepare. I mean, we're talking about, yeah, as you said, it's not even close. It honestly is not close at all. Over the past decade, he is the best quarterback coach and quarterback developer in the country. I mean, it's not. There's no debating to the contrary, and he's just a really, really good play caller. Obviously, this will probably be the you could say in theory, the least talented quarterback he's had in a while, but he's still really damn good. I mean, it's just Miller Moss is still.
You
really
know
good.
what? Can I tell you the analogy I gave today on Rufino and Joe show?
Let's hear it.
Because Joe said the same thing that you just said. And I said, and you know what my response to him was? Then explain a walk-on Baker Mayfield being a Heisman Trophy winner. Because nobody, when Baker Mayfield walked on at Oklahoma, nobody in their right mind thought he was going to be what he was going to be. But you know who did see that in him?
Lincoln Riley. I mean, it wasn't even he went over there not with the starter job. He bet on himself.
Yeah, but Lincoln accepted him in there, and he didn't pussyfoot around and get him in there either.
No.
Right? Like, I mean, it's not. Look, Blake is going to send the heat, and I think in all of this, I don't mind when a guy like Lincoln schemes something up on you. But here's what I would say too. Here is the number, and I'll talk about this at great length on Thursday. You got to tackle in space.
Yeah.
Like that is if there's anything that you've done the last 2 years, man, you got to tackle in space, because if you can't do that, you're going to get cooked. And screw the scheme stuff. Like screw all this shit. You got to tackle in space because you're going to be in positions. So get guys down to the ground, make tackles, and get things happening. I think that's where the game has got to be won, is when you're in the right places, make the plays. Make the simple tackles and get the ball carrier down too.
And that's the weirdest thing, man. You really don't know how good of a tackling unit you have until you actually play, because you're just not – practices just aren't as physical as they once were. But I do think –
It really made me feel better when they went goal line, 1st and goal from the 1, and they stuffed Caleb Jackson 4 straight times.
I do think they'll be better tackling, because you'll never see a team miss 30 tackles in a game again.
Well, you say that.
Yeah, it will not happen again at LSU. It's virtually impossible to tackle as badly as they did in the USC game.
All right,
or the Ole Miss game.
Let me ask you a couple of questions here. Is there anything that Brian Kelly said today that stood out to you? Mine was that he said that he wants to try to make USC's offense one-dimensional. But is there anything that he said today that you want, that just, how do I want to say this, that kind of perked your ears up?
Yeah, it was actually a younger reporter who asked about Jacoby and Guillory when he said you're going to see him make a lot of tackles. He's been more of a space eater. But if he could be a playmaker and actually make tackles, now tackling as a defensive tackle is very difficult to do, especially considering USC's offensive line should be good. I mean, I don't think they're as good as LSU's, but I think they are going to be good. They're definitely probably one of the 4 or 5 best you will play this year. So if Tank can be that good, and someone asks you about Tank and you go out of your way saying, well, he's been our best defensive lineman, our best defensive tackle, and he's going to go out there and make tackles. I thought that was very interesting. And hopefully that's the case. Tank's dad supports your channel. He supports mine as well. I would love to see it. Jacobian has been a guy who's been through all these defensive line coaches. Savion Jones has had better practices as well. I thought that was the most interesting thing, that he brought up the tackling aspect. So I'm really excited to see big number 90 next year.
What do you think he meant by trying to make them one-dimensional?
Yeah, I don't think Brian Kelly wants them throwing, as crazy as that sounds.
So you think they're going to be less aggressive and more passive?
No, I don't think that. I think they're fine if they go into this game saying, if Woody Marks beats us, we can live with it. And I think Woody Marks has been one of the more underrated running backs. I think they'll be okay with that, because they think their offense is going to be good enough to outscore USC. So that's about where I am with it, Blake. There wasn't really anything else that just completely blew me away, other than this is kind of the same situation as the past couple of years, where Brian Kelly has played this team a lot more than LSU has. And I think that's also fascinating as we go into next year.
Cody McGee says Blake and Carter need to be on the FS1 and replace Skip Bayless. Can call it the Rudy Cruz show. Lincoln, he also says Lincoln Riley has been trying to get out of this LSU game ever since he became the head coach at USC. Is Lincoln scared to play an SEC team?
Yeah, I think there is a piece of that.
I think that this has more to do. Fox was trying to put pressure on USC to get out of the game, so that they had their first game in the Big Ten on Fox.
I will also say this. I did like Brian Kelly putting out there about, moving the game and all of it. That whole ordeal was so fascinating to me. Like, play the damn game. I mean, why wouldn't Lincoln Riley be excited about playing this game? Oh, yeah, it's because last time he played LSU, he had 63 put up on him. And guess what? Garrett Nussmeier's putting up a 70 burger. He's putting up a 70 burger.
That, first off, that's not happening. Second off, okay, here's the thing that makes me nervous as a virgin sitting in church with a girl that has big titties is, yeah, that did happen to Lincoln. And I think there is a part of Lincoln that's a competitor. And I don't like, look, man, USC's been shit on all offseason.
They have. No, you're right.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I wish people were saying they were winning the football game.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is interesting. Opens at 6.
Goes down to 4.
Goes down.
I had a guy in Vegas, and a guy at Bet Online tell me, you know why it's going down? The line's going down because people are worried about Nuss's turnovers. That's a whole nother thing. Nuss. Here's a whole nother thing. We haven't even talked about Nussmeier. He has to protect the football. You cannot give Lincoln more possessions, man. You just cannot do it.
What's the guy that he's a big betting reporter on ESPN? And I think he said something like 87% of the money is on LSU or something like that, which is not what you want. It's not.
No, it's not.
Oh, crap.
You want to be 50-50.
Yeah. You don't. 87 is pretty ridiculous. I don't know if I truly believe that, but I did see that tweet. I was like, no, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Bill Conley had it 41-31 Tigers. Did you see that?
Yeah. His SP
and Bill's really good at his job.
Yeah. His SP plus projections. I think he would also come on here and say, though, he is far more concerned about his week 1 projections because there is just so much.
Mm-hmm.
But one more thing about his projections is offensive line returning production is a big part of it. So LSU having so much of it, USC has a lot of it as well, but LSU having the near maximum is pretty ridiculous.
Look, and you got to get pressure on his ass too. All right, a couple more. We'll get you out here. Dr. John Sibley Butler says, Blake, how did the number experts miss so bad on FSU Georgia Tech? What are lessons for predicting college football? ESPN and FSU 70+ winning percentage. All college football today picked FSU. What's up, Carter? I think that live by the portal, die by the portal. I don't know how you felt about that game. I think that their defensive line was just not as good as people thought it was going to be, and they got pushed around, and they wanted it more. I came out last Wednesday, or last Sunday, I forget. When we did our Georgia Tech and FSU preview, I picked Georgia Tech plus 13.5.
Good.
Like heavens yes, because look, man, and this goes for LSU fans too. This is a good question because it can be related to LSU too. You got a shitload that you're replacing. Now, so is USC, but brother, you got a whole. So did FSU. And if you don't look, Carter, I swear to God, you better go out there and run that football. Y'all want to open this shit up? You better go out there and run that son, bitch. Because listen, you let Garrett make one bad decision, you got to give him easy throws. You got to get him into the game. Run that damn rock, baby.
Well, one more thing to your argument, because obviously I'm slightly on the other side of it, which is just do whatever you feel your offense does best. Throwing the ball has a lot more to do with timing, right? Now, running the football has a lot to do with timing as well. But the actual football being distributed from one player to the other is far more consistent, whether you have chemistry or you don't, right? Throwing the football, it's tough to get those game reps and that chemistry, right?
No doubt.
And you saw Georgia Tech being a far more run-based team and Florida State being a little bit more aerial, especially after losing Trey Benson, you saw the difference that made. And obviously, as you know, Blake, I've never been a DJU guy. You just haven't.
God, he's so bad, man.
He's not. I have a bunch of takes as to why I think he's bad. I don't.
Here's my take. Say if you agree or disagree. I don't think he knows what coverages he's seeing.
I also don't think you can be an elite quarterback if you have an overbearing father, like his dad, who always wants to talk about his method or whatever. I don't.
Arch Manning said, "What's up?"
Well, that's a little bit. It's a little bit different. It's a little like he's actually good at football, or at least I think he is. I honestly think, and I truly do mean this, that Florida State took in a lot of transfers that weren't really that good in my estimation, and we saw what happened. And one more thing about the Florida State game, that was a really good super chat, Sibley, one of my really good buddies. It does show you how good of a team LSU played over the past couple of seasons, right?
Yeah.
Because the only reason Florida State was ranked number 10 was based on what they did last year. And a lot of people, thinking it was Norvell, and it was. Norvell is a really good coach.
Well, and their offensive coordinator was out. Alex Atkins was serving a 1-game suspension.
Yes. And, their special teams was good. That's a former LSU guy, John Papuchis. But the truth is as LSU fans, I know there's a lot of concern with this being a difficult season opener, as you said. But you did play 2 unfreaking believably talented Florida State teams over the last 2 years. Is USC also unfreaking believably talented? Yes, they're not as good in my mind as any of those Florida State teams over the last.
Are you as good?
No, but I tend to think, and this is just me, LSU is still very good. There are a lot of players that are returning. There's so much returning production. And college football has so much to do with who you play, more so than any other sport. I'm not saying USC is not good, but that Florida State team last year is probably the best non-Bama team to not make the playoff. They were really damn good. And we saw that play out last year. So going into this game, yeah, USC can go out there and definitely beat us. They're just not as good to me as last year's Florida State team. So I don't think LSU fans should be too nervous.
Oh, I'm nervous, buddy.
Yeah, I am too, in terms of actually going out there and winning the game. But I wouldn't be so nervous because, Blake, going into last year, I really felt that Florida State team was special. I really did. And I feel like USC's got some special pieces. I just don't think they're as good as Florida State's team is last year. So obviously there's so much different about LSU's team. We don't have Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, BTJ, Mason Smith, so on and so on. But I still think they're going to be a really good team. And I do think LSU will win the game this weekend.
Final score or your score prediction, you got one?
I don't have one yet, Blake.
Me either.
But for some reason, I feel this is one of these 31-28 kind of games.
I swear to God, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think that's about about where I am. So, obviously, I feel sort of kind of good about that. I know it's not worded the absolute smoothest. It was interesting that this game's total opened up at 66.5, and it's all the way down in the low 60s now. So, yeah, I hope it's around there. And if it is around there, that means LSU's defense has gotten better. It is crazy to think.
And that means you're running the football at a high clip.
Right. It is crazy to think if USC puts up 28-ish points, that's a W. But
oh, no. Mudbug De La Houssaye. If he gets the 3 interceptions, AJ Swan's coming in.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get to there, though. I think that's going to have a good game.
Carter, the power, Bryant. Hopefully we'll see you next Monday and an LSU win, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us.
See you in Vegas. Blake is going to make a last-second trip to Vegas.